It's always my goal to spend time with people who know more than me about some things so that I can learn from our interaction. For me in this community, one of those people is Blair McHaney. He's the owner of Worx gyms. He's a brilliant mind, and he's also my friend. So thanks for being here, Blair. It's been a little too long since we've chatted in person. I just ran into you a couple of months ago, but for sure too long since I've talked with you on the show. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks, Lisa.
I'm going to start right off and thank you for something you did for me that you don't even realize, because I find holding myself accountable to you with my health is helpful, even though I don't see you very often. I saw you a couple of months ago with mutual friends, and I was carrying around a good 15-ish of COVID stuff that I've gained and lost weight. I've gained and lost throughout COVID. And when I saw you, I was like, oh, Blair. And it motivated me, and I'm pleased to tell you I got that 15 plus a little extra off, and you are to thank partly.
That's awesome. Good for you.
It is. I don't know how it makes you feel that someone sees you and they go, oh, dang it, I gotta get my act together.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you weren't alone there, I'll tell you.
Everyone's around town's hiding from Blair. Oh, that's funny. But let's talk about it a bit. I think that you can inform, so you can give us so much information about health and COVID related exercise, and you've seen it up front and close as the owner of the two gyms in our community. Talk a little bit about the work you've done in that space over the last couple of years almost now.
Yeah, over the last couple of years. Well, it sure shifted, right? I mean, from just trying to get open to organizing, a group of club owners from around the state, hiring a lobbyist who was phenomenally helpful, and then opening up conversations with state legislatures and the state, legislators and Congress people, and then on to some other work with our industry. The main trade association in our industry is called IHRSA, International Health Racquet Sports Association, and I was an advisor to the interim CEO there, and then I was involved in a lot of international work with them, including, and I thought this was really interesting. I was put on a headlight team with some of the chief marketing officer from Anytime Fitness Group and Planet Fitness, and some really, really large operations in the US, Crunch Fitness. And we were asked to sort of help develop sort of an industry rallying cry, right? And it didn't take us long, 20 of us kind of looking at each other like you and I are right now, right? It didn't take us long to say, what do we know, right? I mean, we're in the industry. We've been messaging people for a long time, and we don't seem to get past the first, 20%. So we hired a company called Clearview Insights that was founded by a behavioral psychologist and does marketing messaging. And we had a good budget, conducted a lot of research. A couple of interesting things came out of that. For the first time ever, and this is backed up by some other research done in both Europe and the US by IHRSA. For the first time ever, 65% of people that work out on a regular basis now say they do it for mental health. Weight loss has dropped to number 4 on the list. So what we learned in this research was when people that frequent gyms talk, and there's so many social platforms out there, if you have the right tools, you just go listen, and you can also, as you know, there's also panels you can bring together. We need people that use clubs. What they learned was everybody that works out on a regular basis started talking about how much, especially during this pandemic, Lisa, how much it was about being in a better mood. It was about having control of something around
something, right? That was something, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
And so all of it sort of rolled into this, I feel better emotional. It was this idea of emotion. The 80% that don't frequent gyms a lot, when they went out and sort of talked to them, they came back and they said, hey, it turns out that other 80% thinks everything you do is like really hard, right? and your messaging hasn't been that good to them. And we talk about things like preventing heart disease and preventing cancer and all that goodness that comes with exercise.
Yeah, the thing that I've learned about that too is I work in patient advocacy a lot now, and people don't think about patient advocacy until they need it, until they're in crisis. And then it's even harder to reach them sometimes because they're in their crisis. And I'd imagine it's the same message you're trying to get across to people. Prevention is not nearly as motivating sometimes, unfortunately, as the cure or the fix, or how do you get yourself out of a mess you've gotten yourself into.
Yep, that's right. And what happens is when people see it as prevention, they see
Tomorrow and next week.
effort, and reward is somewhere beyond their cognitive horizon out there. Well, what I'm gonna what reduce my chances of cancer? That's like way out there. But what we learned was, and research backs this up, 5 minutes of exercise and you're in a better mood. And so the idea is, can we start to penetrate further into different marketplaces all over the US by talking more about, just, do you remember, Lisa, on your show one time, and I've used this story a lot.
Oh,
Talked about the 100 days of exercise.
yes.
And
I thought about it when I saw you.
I asked, could you commit to an hour run every day for 100 days? No, I can't. But when we finally narrowed it down and we said 20 minutes walking minimum, peace, go ahead and do more if you want to, but just commit to 20 minutes of walking every day for 100 consecutive days. I said, yep, I can do that. We need more of that. We need to teach people more of that and how to get ready for exercise in their day. So, like, what are the things that you do to make it so you don't have to think about it?
And it's so psychological too. And I'm reading a really good book that's called a life book. And basically it wants you to pair a habit with a new habit. So you have tea at night. So go for a walk first, then have your tea, and it's associated with those two things, or whatever the example is. And I feel like too that I've been using apps through the pandemic for workouts part of the time, and anything that shows 25 minutes ish to 32 minutes, I'm in. But if I see it's like a 36-minute workout, I'm like clicking around looking for something shorter, which is ridiculous because once I get going, it's fine. But if that's what I have to do to get going, then that's what I do. Because the 25 to 35-minute workout for me, that's my sweet spot. And I know it changes my body. I know it makes it to where I can go on hikes and keep up with people. I know what it does for my heart. I know what it does for my body. So that's good for me. But if you told me an hour, I wouldn't even show up probably.
Our whole industry is guilty of, thinking that every group fitness class should be an hour. Peloton has figured this out. Their most popular classes are 15 and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
There's a reason they moved to that, right? They have the data to show what people do. And I think it's just so smart for us to start thinking of those smaller chunks of time just to get people to go do it.
Yes.
Let's stop worrying about dialing up the exercise to here. Let's worry about getting it spatial out this way. And then people can start to bump up where they need to. I think
I think too, talking about just going for a walk, going outside of your door and going for a walk. That's been a message forever. You can start with walking. You can only walk. You can do that and it'll change your health. One thing I've noticed since I haven't applied my walks, it's strictly for fresh air, relaxing, getting out from behind this computer and desk in intervals throughout the day. One thing that I no longer associate with my walks is an app, like a Couch to 5K or a 10 minutes or 10-second break and a 50-second run, or I just walk. And that's for me. And it enables me to do other things. The other thing I have that I had before the pandemic is a desk treadmill. And if and when I put on my shoes after I work out or just in the morning before I'm even allowed to look at my phone and check emails or anything, it's a, I don't know if you've ever seen, you have a table desk. So mine has a treadmill and it only goes up to a 4. It doesn't incline. It counts my steps. It's intended strictly for walking and working. And I can walk at a 2 to 2.5 pace and be done and get my 10,000 for sure, just checking emails and doing some research before I even think about the rest of my day. If I put my shoes on and step on, I never get off before 10,000 steps. It happens so fast. Wow. It happens so fast. And there's times when I'm at 7,500 and I think, okay, let me just do this one more thing. Now I can't edit or do graphic design during walking, but I can type and I can edit like words and I can do some of the work that I do. And I get through it just fine. And that to me has been really life-changing because that checks that box off. I walk my 10,000 steps. Anything else I do needs to be maybe cardio or strength training. It's working some other part of my health and fitness.
Perfect example of working it into your lifestyle, not having to think about it as a lifestyle more, but working it into your lifestyle. A really good book by Michelle Seeger called No Sweat, and it's all about creating exercise habits. And that's almost like right out of the book.
Right.
Yeah, really a neat book. And we got to work with her during this lockdown, by the way, during the last 2 years. We had to work with her on this Earth's a Headlight team and on a few other things. Yeah.
Nice. Well, let's take a break and we're going to get to, at some point in the show, Blair, you're so well read. And I reach out to you every year about this time, right? Every other year and say, I need some book recommendations because my son is an avid reader as well. And I respect what you select. So we're going to get to that at some point in the show, but let's take a break and we'll come back. I want to talk a bit about what you do outside of gyms and do the work that you've been doing kind of behind the scenes for about 5 years now. So we're talking with Blair McHaney. We'll be back in just a moment. We are talking with one of my favorite people in our community, Blair McHaney. I wanted to share with people who may not know the work you do outside of Gold's Gym and here in our community. It's been about 5 years that you went on, took a turn, and tell us a bit about that. I know there's a lot of layers to it, but just give us an overview of the work you do outside of Wenatchee.
Yeah, so and it's still primarily within the health and fitness vertical, although we have customers in the medical aesthetic practice vertical as well. And we have a software company. Software company is called MXM, stands for Member Experience Metrics. And we do customer experience software specifically in the fitness industry to really help understand what the member journey's like. So for example, some of our customers, we actually measure what the joint experience is like. We measure what the onboarding experience was like, what the ongoing member experience is like, and also the cancellation experience. And then we teach a lot. So besides learning a lot from some of our customers, and some of those customers are, some of the best known brands in the industry, like Equinox out of New York City, with locations all over the US and some in Europe as well. But we work a lot at a strategic level. We usually with the C-suite, the CEOs and the presidents or, COOs of those companies to help them kind of figure out how they should be measuring the member experience. But that's one thing, like measuring it is one thing. How you operationalize that information to make that experience better and better for members. That's what we specialize in, and that's the software. So I got sidelined down to Palo Alto for about 3 years and spent 3 years on the executive team of a company called Medallia. And they're a customer experience software company. I won't go through all the details of the serendipity that had that happen, but it was great. During that time, I figured out a solution. A lot of the software is enterprise stuff, right? So it's big and infinitely configurable, and it takes experts. And so what we did was we sort of pre-configured that software for the fitness industry so that we could go back out and resell it, all the way down to companies my size with 2 clubs in a rural part of Washington State. But we have some really big customers and we have a lot of small customers. We have some of the most iconic clubs in the world as customers. Chelsea Piers in New York, and the Greenwood in Denver, and the Houstonian, and Equinox and EOS Fitness, which is a brand that's just exploding out there right now.
I've been to the Houstonian, and it's a next level for sure.
Yeah.
What have you learned through this process of trying to gather this information? Because you're a winner in our community many times over in terms of customer service and what you deliver here and paying attention to that experience. When I come into your gym, somehow they know my name, no matter how long I've been away, which makes me feel special, like I haven't been gone as long as I thought. And just think little details like that. And what have you learned through this 5-year experience of trying to gauge experience that you've brought back home, or that you took from home and applied to the other gyms that now you work with?
Yeah, so a little bit, I mean, certainly a lot both directions there. And I learned a lot at Medallion. You know, I've always had this idea about member experience and sort of this, I call it my one customer theory. If I can just get that first customer and I can make them really happy, they'll bring somebody else, and then that'll multiply. And at some point, I won't be able to service them by myself. And so then that's when you start to add, you know, that's why you grow an organization, and so that you can execute on your promises with the customer. I've always been obsessed with that idea. Like, how do companies do good things, do them well, and become obsessed about the customer or member experience? Being at Medallion, seeing that happen at scale was really an eye-opener. Apple was one of our key customers, and I got to spend a lot of time with Kate Harding, who's head of customer experience for all Apple retail. And just seeing how they were able to take a company that size and operationalize it to where the people at the front lines in every one of those stores is bought in, and they see their data and they self-coach and they get better at what they do. That had me realize there's no excuse the size of your company, right? You can't say, yeah, well, Blair, I get it. You do it at 2 clubs, but we have 45 clubs. How do we? No. There's companies much larger than you and much more complex than you that get it done. So it was really being able to take our ideas of how you get your front lines engaged in what your purpose is of your organization. And then you have to prove that you're engaged in what your purpose is, because if you're not measuring the member experience, if you're not getting that feedback coming in from the customer, your purpose is just marketing material. It's not operational guidelines. And then seeing some of our customers adopt the things that we've done in our 2 clubs, adopt some of the exact same principles and scale it successfully has been phenomenally rewarding. Just phenomenal.
And that's the thing about scaling. And I think it's important to know the passion and the mission that you're talking about. I owned a pillow company that I ended up getting stuff on the Friends show, and this internet company that it was kind of before there were so many posh, you know, children's. I just started as something to do while Hunter was at preschool. But I understood a third-party endorsement. I understood that getting my pillows on the set of Friends would get me magazine and television interviews and telling my story, because I think the story behind a business is really important. If you don't have a story, then you're in business maybe for some other reasons. But one of the things that I think about scaling is I knew I did not want to scale that company. I had someone fly out here and say, we could manufacture these in China, we could do this, we could do that. I already knew the quality control issues of sewing a C perfectly that didn't collapse. I mean, there were just so many layers. I already knew that wasn't my dream, wasn't what I wanted to do. I turned it down, and that's when I got my show on KPQ. And I thought, Lisa Bradshaw, I can scale. Nobody's going to copy it. Nobody's going to steal it. That's what I'm going to do, and I'll figure it out as I go. But it's important to know why you're scaling, what you're scaling, and even if you want to, even if that's what you want for you.
Because one of our customers is Gainesville Health and Fitness, Gainesville, Florida. Joe Cerulli's the owner of that company. Inc. magazine, about maybe 7-8 years ago, maybe it's longer than that. I don't know. We lost a couple of years there. So Inc. magazine said the second most profitable health club operation in the world by EBITDA, or by net profit. And Joe has zero intention of moving out of Gainesville, Florida. He has 3 clubs in Gainesville. He's making those 3 clubs in Gainesville. He wants them to be the best company in the world, period. Not interested in selling it, not interested in scaling it. This is our scale. We're going to do it better than anybody in the world. And man, do they. It is just an incredible operation. I think he was our very first customer, in fact, in Gainesville. And then you've got this CEO of EOS Fitness, Rich Drenberg, just as passionate about customer experience and employee experience and getting people purpose-driven, and he's obsessed. And he became the CEO of EOS Fitness, and they had 16 locations. They're at 68 right now and growing fast, you know. But you're so dead on. You really have to know, as the leader of that organization, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to do that? My first few weeks at Medallia, part of my job was to help coach the CEO and president, who were the founders, a married couple. And I remember sitting down with them and saying, do you really want to lead a publicly traded organization? And they said, yeah, I think so.
And you don't necessarily know what all that means, and that's okay.
Right.
But you have to be ready for whatever you're signing up for, and ready to roll with those punches. So,
exactly.
So when we come back, I could keep you on for an hour. When we come back, let's get some book recommendations, and talk about what we could be reading in the new year to come. Okay. We'll be back in just a moment. Okay, Blair, we're talking with Blair McHaney, and we just have a couple minutes left. And like I said, I could have you on for an hour, and we could cover more. I could have you on just for a half hour to talk about books. I reach out to you for book recommendations. What is your number one book recommendation coming into the new year for people to read this coming year in 22?
So specifically for business, it's called The Marketing Rebellion. Okay. And it's by Mark Schaefer. And Mark's research he says, look, of 100% of your marketing out there, you control 1/3 of it. The other 2/3, you not only don't control, you're not even invited to that conversation. That's happening without you. And it's happening at a pretty big scale. And it happens just through, like, I just brought up Gainesville Health and Fitness and EOS to you on this, right? I mean, it happens like that. It happens at dinner parties. It certainly happens on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and everywhere else too. That piece you're not invited to and you can't control. The third that you can't control, you're paying for and no one believes you anyway. So he basically starts with that premise. And then as a marketeer, he moves into why the customer experience is the hill you should die on. But then how he does that, you mentioned something right out of the get-go. If you don't have a story.
Right.
He talks about your story, and the most human company wins.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
The most human company wins. And you can use all the technology in the world, but it's the analog stuff that really humanizes a company. It's the one-on-one conversations. It's the people that remember your name. You know, plant and equipment is one thing, but the soul of a company are the humans.
I think too, even in what you name your company, I remember naming one of my companies. I wanted to give it my son's initials and something. And I read and I learned that, well, unless they care about your son's initials, they might not remember the name of your company, right? It's even in those details, you know, what is the story, and how do you make sure other people relate to it and they care about it? How do you make sure they care about it? And I think as a storyteller, it's what I do for a living. I feel like the businesses that are good at telling a story are the businesses that I tend to support. And the story doesn't have to be an emotional one necessarily. Doesn't have to tug at my heartstrings. It just has to make sense that there's a story behind that company.
Yep. One of the things Mark talks about in this is a story behind a local soap company that he can't figure out why people are paying 5 times as much for the soap from that local soap company when Ivory Soap has the most marketing money behind it in soap history. It's because they know the 2 owners and they're married and they know the name of their dog and they're involved in this, in this local thing that we did. And it's the story behind it. And learning that. And I think a big part of it too, that we want to get better at here with Worx is the story of our team members, right? We want to get more and more of their stories out there. So you're dead on the story piece.
Well, I love your story, Blair. And come back and share any facet of it anytime you want. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so glad you had me on. Always good to see you.
Take good care and have a great 22.
You too.